Hello everyone, Eric Chappelle, Civil Community Evangelist for Autodesk, and I'm here today with John Sayer, Technical Marketing Manager, and we're going to present you a special edition of our Civil Engineering Community Webcast series. Today's topic is Immerse Yourself in Your Infrastructure Project, Intro to VR. Before I turn it over to John, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, and by the way, here are mine and John's photos, so you can so you have an idea who's speaking with you today. Before we get to John's presentation, I just wanted to talk to you briefly about our community webcast series. Like I said, this is a special edition. Typically, we do these on the first and third Wednesdays of the month. We've been doing them for about 3 years now. It'll be 3 years in April. And the goal is to bring our users of our products closer together with the folks who make the products. We want to give you information about features in the products, or as is the case today, a special workflow with multiple products. We want to give you a chance to ask questions and provide feedback, and again, just a way to bring you folks closer to us. Our next community webcast is 1 week from today, but an hour earlier, 12 to 1 Eastern, and we're going to talk about Plant 3D for water and sewer treatment plants. Our presenter will be Buddy Legnan, and he'll be taking you through how this Plant 3D product, which I'm sure you've all heard of but maybe haven't seen the details of. If you do water and sewer treatment work in your company, or you work with people who do, this is a great opportunity for you to learn how that product can be applied in that type of design. I also want to draw your attention to our fairly new Autodesk Civil Engineering Community Center. This is an excellent centralized hub for all kinds of information that relates to civil engineering, civil design, and Autodesk products. So if you want to learn things about Civil 3D, InfraWorks, and even Recap or Revit or Navisworks, this is a central place where you're going to see all that information pulled in from various sources. News stories, forums, gallery, tips and tricks, one of our most popular areas where people come here daily to get a new tip or trick about InfraWorks or Civil 3D or one of the other products. You'll see actually the YouTube videos posted up here that relate directly to the topic that John is going to be presenting today, so there's always good stuff up here. So definitely want to bookmark it. It's civil-community.autodesk.com. Visit it daily. There's something new definitely every day, but really because of the way we have it set up, there's a new thing every time you visit the site. I don't believe we have any forward-looking content that we're going to cover today, or that John's going to cover, but just in case our discussion takes us down that path, just know that any statements or discussion regarding features that are in preview or in beta or things that we're working on and haven't yet been released, that there is no guarantee that those things will be in the software until you actually see them in a fully supported version of the software. And please don't make any purchasing decisions on anything that we discuss that is listed as such, as preview or beta or something we're working on. We invite you to ask lots of questions. We've got experts in the background, Dave Lawrence and Dave Tyner, who are going to be helping with questions. Because of the size of our audience, we do need you to use the question window. We can't use audio questions, unfortunately, but we will be doing our best in the background to answer your questions. And if anything of particular interest or of developing theme emerges in the questions panel, I'll jump in and interrupt John and ask the question out loud, and he can provide some answers that way as well. We will try to pause at the end for some questions out loud, but John does have a lot of ground to cover, so there's a chance we may not have that time at the end. I have a few polls I'd like you to participate in. I'll launch the first one now. This one is, what type of projects do you currently work on? So please make your selection. Let us know what kinds of projects you work on. In a few moments, I'll share the results. About not quite half of you have voted. I'd like to get it up to about 80%, so if you haven't voted, please do so. We're at 70%, so keep on clicking. All right. Pretty close there. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll down, and I'll show you the results. You can see that we've got a lot of transportation and land development folks here, a tiny little bit of municipal and water wastewater, and then 36% under the other category. All right, 2 more polls, and then we'll get on to the topic at hand. Are you currently creating VR experiences? Simple yes or no here. You guys are doing great. Already 66% of you have voted. I guess there's a lot less to read on a yes or no question, so we get our answers a lot more quickly. All right, I'll close that one and show you the results. 68% no and 32% yes, so interesting. All right, one more. Which of the statements below resonate the most with you? And for this one, you can pick more than one. So pick as many as you like. All right, answers are coming in now. And while folks are filling that out, I just want to say how much we appreciate you all giving us a little bit of time out of your day today. This apparently is a very hot topic for us. We had what we believe is going to be a record. We already know is a record number of registrations for this series, and we're probably going to hit a record with attendance as well. So it makes us really happy to know that we put a topic out there that is something that folks are definitely interested in. So thanks for joining, and I hope that you guys get a lot of great value out of the presentation. I know you will. I've seen John present it before, and it's pretty awesome. So I'm going to close that poll and share the results with you. You can see that, well, I'll just let you read for yourself. There's a lot of wording there, but our first 2 choices had the most response, and then kind of decline as we go down to the bottom. All right. So I'll hide those results and go back to the presentation here. And now it's time to turn the floor over to John Sayer, Technical Marketing Manager, and he's going to take you through immersing yourself in your infrastructure project, Intro to VR. John, I'm going to change you to presenter, and you now have the floor.
All right, Eric, thank you. Can you see my screen?
I sure can. I'm looking at Civil 3D right now.
Perfect, perfect. Well, I want to try and address that last question. I saw that there was a lot of people that think that it's a time-consuming thing to create VR. What you will see here today, we are going to be able to deploy a VR at the end of this webcast. We have, if you look at the clock, it's 12:09 here. You can see it down here. I'm in hopes that we get completely through everything. What we will go through today is a lot of the products, several of the products in the AEC collection. What you need to remember, okay, is that a lot of this VR is basically, I don't want to call it a byproduct, but I do want to say you've already got all of the legwork done. All you need to do is push your project to VR. Okay, so keep that in mind. And I had to kind of reel myself in when I started doing this, and I thought, man, you know, the time-consuming part is really in the conceptual design and the preliminary design and then the final design, so on and so forth. That we're basically just going to push that into VR. So we're going to start in Civil 3D. We're going to jump into InfraWorks from there, and then we'll bring everything into 3ds Max, which will be our direct conduit into 3ds Max Interactive, where we will generate our VR. Now, once we get into VR, I'm going to show you how to change the pavement to a transparent material, and that way you can hit a button on your keyboard or your HTC Vive, which is the hardware we're going to talk about today. You can like pull a trigger on the Vive controller, and it will make the pavement go transparent so you can see utilities. And then I'm also going to animate a car and show you how to animate a car. And it's really a pretty straightforward process. Then at the end of the demonstration, we'll talk about the data set that I used. So a little bit about the data set. This is actually the data set that I used for our shared reference point webinar that we did almost a year ago. We've used this data set quite a bit, so I wanted to go ahead and build everything around it again. And again, we'll be talking at the end of the demonstration on what we're going to provide for a data set. So first off, what I want to do is show you inside of Civil 3D. This site was actually flown with a drone, and we captured existing conditions. And I went back and I graded this site for the parking area and the commercial project. We've got a Revit model for the building, so I brought the Revit model in, shared the coordinates, made everything marry up really well. So this information here, when I get into InfraWorks, you'll be able to see different coverages that I created. Those coverages are no more than just areas, meaning polylines that represent the islands, like you see here I'm highlighting. And that way when I bring them into InfraWorks, it's very easy for me to add a material to it so that we can start to add context. So today what I'm going to do, I want to be able to see my utilities. So this is just a pipe network that was generated in Civil 3D. So we're going to go ahead and export that out and bring it into InfraWorks so you can see kind of that interaction. If you want to see the interaction between Civil 3D and InfraWorks for this entire project for the shared reference point, you can always go back and watch that video on the community site. So basically what we're going to do is I need to create solids from these pipes. Now, this is just one way of doing this, okay? I don't want you to think that you have to create solids every time. This is just one way to do it. So all I'm going to do is go ahead and flip this thing over on its side, meaning give myself a southwest isometric view of it. The reason I do that is because then I'm able to see when I select the pipes a little bit better, and plus it prompts me whenever I go into the command here in just a second. I'm going to shut the style off. It prompts me and tells me that I need to be in a like a 3D isometric view in order to select everything correctly. So I'm just going to type convert, and it will show here convert to 3D solids. There's not a ribbon selection for this. You need to just type that in, and I'm just going to pick all of these entities right here. All right. Do I want to erase them? No, I do not. I never want to erase them. And it added the solids. All right. I'll go back to a plan view, and I will select each individual piece. Now, when I select that pipe, I want to be sure it's just showing me a layer here. It's not actually grabbing my structure or pipe that I've got built into Civil 3D. So I just grab a couple of them, and I can select similar, and it picks all of them. Maybe the greatest command in AutoCAD in general is select similar, or similar. Man, I can't even talk. So once we have that selected, all I need to do is export this out as an FBX file. Now remember, all of this is on a coordinate system, okay? So if I go to export and I drop down here to FBX, I can dump this out. Now, I've got a folder system that I start, and I've started it a little bit. You might want to take note of how I've added things in. It's pretty straightforward. I just make a folder for everything that I dump out so I can keep everything separated. So this is going to be the FBX from Civil, and I'm just going to call this Storm. All right? And I'll hit Save. Now, I need to be sure and select my Select Objects button here because everything's still highlighted, so it'll select those if I do that. I'm only going to export the objects and the materials, and they're going to embed the textures. I hit OK. I look down at the bottom in the command line, make sure that it says that I have 11 objects I want to dump, so now I can see that I've got those exported out. Now, that's where we will stop in Civil 3D today. There's a ton of information that I could show you on how to bring data back and forth, but like Eric has already said, we've got a lot to go through. So I'm going to jump into InfraWorks. So this is the model, and this is how it looks, and this is basically from the shared reference point data set that I built. So you can see the coverage areas, the different areas that have, you know, grass, pavement, so on and so forth. So you can export those out any way you'd like out of that Civil model in any project that you have. You can do it, in the same way. It's just, again, there's a couple different ways you can do it, but it's a good way of doing it. So I'm going to bring that FBX file in. So if I look here in my Windows Explorer, and I did not open another window there, so let me do that real quick. All right, I'll scroll down to my project. I've got this on another screen. Give me a second. All right, so here it is. And if I look FBX Civil, there's my storm file I just dumped out. I'm just going to drag that over, drop it on the screen. All right. It's going to come in. I'm going to bring it in as city furniture in this particular way because it's a solid. I'm going to pick my coordinate system that it's in, and I'm just going to hit close and refresh, and voila. Well, you can't really see it, but you can see that pipe sticking out right there. So a couple different things. If I go up and select a different view, I'm in conceptual view right now. If I go to my engineering view, I can see the pipes all underneath the pavement. All right. This is what we want to try and replicate inside of our VR experience. Whenever we're hopping around the site, we want to be able to see this very quickly. So I'm going to show you how to do that. All right. Now, I can go back to my conceptual view, and every time I talk about VR, I talk about InfraWorks being the aggregator of data, because what we're going to do is export we're going to export this 3D model as an FBX, okay? Now, it's going to break things down a little bit into building, ground, so on and so forth, but we can add to this model just as much as we want to, okay, as much as we've got information for. And then we take it out as one export into 3ds Max. So that's why I call it the aggregator of data, because you can, this model could be much, much more complex, and all of it would export. Okay. Now you will see whenever we get to Max that the cars don't export very well from InfraWorks. The textures and things that come in white. There's other ways. There's other cars that you can use that look much better inside of Max and inside of Max Interactive, and I would recommend using those cars. So, but I wanted you to be able to see the context of what we were doing. All right. So let's do this. Let's show you the next step. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to export a 3D model, all right? Now, a couple things here whenever we set this up. I'm just going to set it up as a bounding box. You could do a polygon if you wanted. You could do the entire model, all right? I'm just going to pick my area here, maybe. Come on now, my mouse is not wanting to work. Now I'll double click. All right? Now we've got our area selected. Now we need to jump down to the coordinate system and set the coordinate system correctly. And then we need to change our offset. All right, so I'm going to go to a user-defined offset. We don't need the decimal places in Max, so I'm going to take those out. All right, this is a step you need to remember. And I want to dump out multiple files. So you can see here it's going to dump out all these different files. So I'm going to set that location to where I want that to go. All right, and unfortunately, we do have to browse out several times to this project, so bear with me while I do that. Here's my InfraWorks out. I've already got these dumped out because I don't want to take the time in this webinar to dump these out. So I'll just select that folder, and I'll hit, make sure that these two selections are checked under options. We don't really need to check this particular option. I've not seen where that's affecting anything, so you can leave that off. So I would hit export here, and it would export all of that out. All right, I'm going to close this because I don't want to take the time to do that right now. It does take about 10 minutes. I say 10 minutes, maybe it just seems like 10 minutes. Maybe it's between 5 and 10, but that's 5 and 10 precious minutes that I have to show you information today. So I'm going to show you that this is what it dumps out. InfraWorks FBX out, you get all of this. These are FBX files, all right, of the building, city furniture, ground, pipelines, and trees. All right, we're done in InfraWorks, okay? So again, before I jump to 3ds Max, think of InfraWorks as the aggregator of data. We can bring shape files, we can bring SDF files, we can bring, well, here, let me just show you. We can bring 3D models, We can attach a civil 3D drawing and pull information from that drawing. We can bring in DGNs. We can bring in point clouds, raster images, everything in the world that you can think of, we can bring it in here and aggregate our model so that we can push out our VR experience. All right, let's jump to 3ds Max. All right, in 3ds Max, I've already got it loaded here. One thing you want to be sure of is that you have this interactive tab at the top. Now, a little bit about 3ds Max and how you get 3ds Max interactive. If you have 3ds Max on subscription, or you have the AEC collection on subscription, it's active, then 3ds Max Interactive is an entitlement. So you would go to your manage.autodesk.com account, and it will show up in your account under 3ds Max. So that's one question I wanted to be sure to cover, because folks look at this and, man, that's great, that's awesome, but how do I get it? Well, that's how you get it, okay? So you need, it'll just show up under 3ds Max. Once you have that, just install it and you'll get this interactive tab. And we are going to use this interactive tab in this webcast, so you'll see that here in just a second. So all I'm going to do in 3ds Max, if you're a civil engineer or you're a designer or anything that has to do with infrastructure, you hear the words 3ds Max and you start to shake. Well, you don't have to be an expert to do what we're going to do. All we're going to do in 3ds Max is bring in the data that we just pushed out from InfraWorks. We're going to run a script on it, and then we're going to send it to 3ds Max Interactive, okay? Now, once we have that information in our VR, then we will come back and animate the car inside of 3ds Max, which is, again, I'm going to show you a little bit of a simplified workflow on how to do that. So I'm going to go up to File and Import into 3ds Max, and I will scroll out here. I can do this one time, and then I can go up and look at my history. So I will go to that folder that's got the FBXs from InfraWorks, and I'm going to bring in my ground first. Now this dialog box will come up for the import, tells you the import version, and shows you these presets. You don't have to do anything here. Just leave it set to this architectural Revit preset and hit OK. Now this is everything ground-wise. Right, so I go back to File and Import, and I'll select my building, and OK. And it brings in my building. I'll go ahead and import in my city furniture, hit OK. And all of that comes in. Notice that my pipe network comes in also, the solids from that. All right, I'll bring in my pipelines. All right, so I used pipelines inside of InfraWorks to represent my parking spaces, my parking stalls. Again, just one way to do it. All right, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and that's the way that I did it in this particular instance. All right, and I'll go to Import again, and I'll bring in my trees. Now, guess what? We are almost done in 3ds Max, okay? So again, when you think that it takes a lot of time to generate a VR, you're really only using the information that you've already created for your design or your preliminary design. And we all know that we've got information that we've got to build just to sometimes get the project, all right? So that information can be pulled directly in just as you've seen right here. All right, so once it's inside of 3ds Max, we need to run a script, and I'm going to make this script available, and I've done that on my YouTube page, my personal page, and there's videos on how to do this on the ADSK infrastructure YouTube page. I've made it, announced it in those videos that I will email you this script, okay? So I want to get you the script so that you don't have to go in and rename any of the materials, all right? So this script is going to take care of that for us. This script, and let me bring that up here. I did make sure that I brought it up. It's called Fix InfraWorks Mesh. So in order to run the script, I can just grab it and I can drag it onto the screen. All right. Now it's called the Meshinator, which I love. But this was provided by the M&E guys. I think Jose may have, I think I got it from Jose. And we're gonna bring this, we're gonna go ahead and run this script, and it's gonna create some new textures for us. So I'm just gonna select everything, and I'm gonna go ahead and put check marks here and clean up, and I'll select clean it, and then I'm going to browse out with my new texture path. Okay, again, this is the hardest part of using the script. So if I drop down and go to my D drive here and get down to 2018, and did I pick the right one there? Yes, right there. And I'll pick my new textures folder. That's where it's going to put this. All right, I hit OK, and I simply hit go. And I can actually bring over Windows Explorer here, and I can show you that it is creating new textures with the right naming convention. All right, so that it'll come in and work easily in 3ds Max Interactive. So you've got everything. So I've got people that were shown, and you can see that it created different textures for those. So that's all it's really doing, is creating that, but it is a necessary step. Now, once that is done, I would go up and save my 3ds Max file. All right, again, sounds very silly, but there's a reason that I do it. Well, the number one reason is that I don't like to recreate my work. I don't know anybody that's on this call that would like to recreate their work, but I'm just going to call this SRP Webcast and save the Max file. Now this is where we're done here in Max for the moment. Okay. Now what we need to do is open 3ds Max Interactive, and I've already opened it up. All right, and I am in a project, but I want to show you how to create that project. So I'm going to go to my project manager. All right, and I want to create a project using a template for the HTC Vive. So you can see here, we can create VR models for VR gear, for the VR Google, the HTC Vive, and the Oculus. Now, the HTC Vive is the only one that's the hardware that I have, so that's the only template that I've used. But there are additional templates here that you can play around with. So I would select the HTC Vive and hit create, and then just path out and create that project. So again, I path out to that 3ds Max Interactive folder that I've generated underneath, and just hit OK, and then give it a name. And you can name it whatever. All right, I could name it a VR test. All right, so I would hit create. I'm going to cancel. I would hit create, and it generates. It takes about, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes to generate the project. Okay, and what it's doing is it's creating all the presets for the HTC Vive and getting it ready for us to import our information. All right, so that's literally all it would do, is build you a screen that looks like this. Okay, so this is the VR learning level. This is not where we want our information to come in, and this is, again, not something that we want it to default to. So first step inside of 3ds Max Interactive is to create a new level. So we're going to go to File and select New Level. That's it. Now it kind of starts to look like it would in context. We can see clouds, things of that nature. Looks a little bit more familiar. So once we create the level, we need to save the level. All right, so here's something you need to kind of pay attention to. It doesn't default to the content folder or the levels folder. And I did this, I can tell you, I did this to myself whenever I started creating these. I created the level in a different folder, and then I went to deploy, and it wouldn't set my my level correct whenever I opened the executable in the Vive. So be sure to path out to this content and levels folder so that it sees this level. This level, I'm just going to call it SRP. We'll just call it SRP for right now. Keep it something simple because we're going to have to put this in a file here in just a little bit, the project.lua file. All right, so it's done. All right, and we are ready to push things from 3ds Max. So I would simply click back here on 3ds Max, and this is just habit, and I don't even know if it's necessary, but I always grab everything, and I go up to the Interactive tab, and I select Level Send All. Now, this dialog box you see, you can leave everything set default. We don't have to make any additional checks in here. We can just hit Send and Close. Now, it's going to start blinking, all right? What it's doing, if you look here in the lower left-hand corner, is it's creating a bunch of FBX files. Those FBX files are going to go directly into 3ds Max Interactive, and it's going to import all of that data and then compile it. Now, I wanted to do this real time so that you can see, number one, what's happening on the screen. I did get a text, or not a text, an email from somebody that said that their screen was flashing whenever they did this, and they didn't understand why. I wanted you to see this so that it kind of tells the story why. Once this is done, it will come into 3ds Max Interactive, and we'll be able to see the data start to compile. All right, so it stops blinking there, and you can see here that it started to do something in Max Interactive. So if I get back into that session, you can see it's importing the files. Eric, while it's importing these files, do you have any questions?
Sure, we do have a few. Can you describe again what the Meshinator does exactly?
The Meshinator takes all of the materials, and it changes the naming convention so that Max Interactive uses it a little bit easier. That's the best way that I know to describe it.
Okay.
So that's what it does.
We had a couple of questions too about what...
Hey Eric, I'd be happy to hop in on that because I actually wrote the Meshinator.
Oh, okay.
There
so the
you go.
Meshinator,
Please do.
yeah. So the Meshinator will name the object in the InfraWorks mesh, the material, the same name as the texture, which is the ID. So that way it makes it really easy to track down any particular mesh and its mesh's material because it's all named the same thing, and that's what it does.
Thanks a
That
lot.
does keep you from having to do that manually, that manual process in Max Interactive, correct?
It would be impossible to do this without that. You need this.
Yep. Hence why we're giving it to you. All right, it's almost through importing here.
There was another couple of questions about what VR models the Max Interactive was able to export to. John, do you have an idea of that, or Dave?
What models? You mean what you can deploy to?
Yeah, you're deploying to HTC Vive with this example. I saw, Google VR's on there. What other hardware? Oculus, I think I saw on there. What other hardware can you set this up for?
Well, you've actually got the option to deploy it to either an Android, an iOS, a PS4, just a web, and then the Xbox. Now, I've not done any of those, but you can deploy to those particular pieces of hardware also. Does that answer what they're... And that's one answer. Dave, do you have another answer to that?
I'd say we have beta versions of HoloLens templates, but the two biggies are Oculus and Vive. Those are the most supported, most developed templates.
Thanks, Dave. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on here. Thanks, Eric. All right, so it has stopped importing and compiling all of the information. So it doesn't automatically zoom to where our model's at. So I need to find our model so that we can start take about 3 or 4 more steps here before we start to bring in the cars and do the other things. So I'm going to select here in my Explorer tab. All right, I'm just going to select one of the units, and I'm going to hit my F key on my keyboard. That'll take me to my location of my project. All right. So once I've done that, I want to kind of, well, I'm going to leave it right here for right now. But you can see I just if I select something inside of the model here and hit F, I can then zoom back. So when I can't explain how the controls for moving around work very well, just because I'm just going to tell you they work a little bit slow. If you right-click, it'll spin the model 360 degrees and it'll move it up and down. All right, if you hold your wheel down, it'll kind of pan back and forth. That can be a little bit slow. You can use your WSD keys on your keyboard to move in and out, and you can scroll in and out here. So I usually just grab something in the model, and if I want to see it or move around a little bit easier, I hit my F key, it zooms to it, and then my controls work really well with my mouse. So that's just, again, one way to do it. All right. So a couple things we need to do inside of Max Interactive before we can bring any other information. And I'm running short on time here, so I'm going to get right to it. First thing we need to do is we need to set static physics, all right, so that we can teleport around. So I'm going to go here to Content, Models, and I'm going to drop down to my SRP Webcast folder, and I'm going to select all of my units here in my asset browser. All right, I'll just mass select them, right-click, and tell it I want to enable static physics. Now, wait on it when you do this, okay? Don't think, you don't see anything happening right now, but now you do. Right here in the lower right-hand corner, it's compiling all of that data. All right? So once that data is compiled, it'll tell it that we have static physics set to all of our units so that we can teleport around on top of them.
Hey, John.
The next thing, yeah.
They're gonna need a plugin to be able to do that. I know,
and that's
I think it's available
in the document.
Okay, good.
It is. That's in the document that I'm going to give them.
Okay.
Thank you, though. All right, so we've got our static physics set. All right, I'm going to do a little cleanup here, and the next thing we'll do is create our player start. Now I'm going to just zoom in and create a player start. You can create your player start anywhere you want, but I mean it's basically going to be where you are spawned into the VR. So in order to do that, I'm just going to create one right here. So I'll go to my Create tab. Number one, if you don't have a Create tab here, you can hit this plus sign that you see, and you can just add it to your UI. So I'm going to scroll down and select Player Start, and I'm just going to pick one time, all right? I can't stress you enough. Just pick once, all right? Then hit Escape, and then you can just pick out here somewhere. And you don't start, if you pick 3 or 4 times, you're going to have 3 or 4 player starts. You're going to have to delete the ones you don't want. So that's why I tell you, kind of warn you about that. So that's going to be our player start. All right. Next step is to edit edit the project.lua file. So I'm going to search for that. I'm just going to type in project.lua. What we're going to do inside of here is tell it what the default level is going to be when we activate or when we initialize the VR experience. So right here under default level, remember we created a level, and that's the level we're in right now, and it's called SRP, okay? And I will hit save and close that file. And that's all we have to do to that file. I'm going to hit clear search results because I won't be able to see anything if I don't do that. Now the last thing we do is we need to modify the functionality teleport flow editor, all right? And again, let me get this open here, and I'll tell you, when people see this, they start to panic a little bit. So I'm going to double-click on the flow editor, all right, and it'll open that up. Now, here's the thing. This flow editor, and it's coming, I think. Take it in a minute to open up. All right, this flow editor, when it opens up, it's basically, there's a ton of flow nodes in it, okay? Looks like this. So the first thing a person wants to do is close it, okay? Don't be afraid of it. All we're going to modify is this area right here, this box, this check normal for spawn location. Right now it's set to 1, all right? We need to be able to bounce around on everything inside of our model, all right? So think of slope, and it would be looking at something like a 1% slope. Well, we're going to delete that, right-click, and create a new math node. So we're going to go to numeric and pick greater than or equal to. Now, once this is in, I'm going to give it a value here for B, and I'm going to say 0.5. So anything that's, think of percent, anything that's a 0.5% or greater, it will teleport onto. All right. Then we just connect Z to A and value to bool, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. And we save this and we close it. And at this moment, we could actually deploy this as a VR, okay? That's everything that you need to do. So literally in about 15, well, since we've gotten it into Max Interactive, I think we've been working for about 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. We're ready to push this to VR. So we could go up and hit test level and we could look at it. All right, now, I do want to be able to see through this pavement so I can see my pipe. I can see the stub of my pipe right there, but I can't really see anything else. So, well, I can't really see the rest of the pipes and structures, and I want to be able to squeeze like a controller and see, or the trigger on a controller and see that. So let's set that up real quick, and we do that in our level flow tab. All right, and again, this may look a little complicated in the beginning, but it's really very intuitive, and once you see how things are put together, it's basically just hooking up all the pieces and parts. So the material that I want to work with is this pavement right here. So I select the material, and in level flow, I can right click and hit create unit. All right, you have to do this for everything you want to modify. I'm going to create a unit. All right, and then I'm going to, if I want to get to the rest of my my commands here, I can type in, I need to add get mesh unit, or get unit mesh. I do that backwards every time. Get unit mesh. All right, it's going to pull the mesh, or it's going to look at the mesh that's attached to that unit. So I'm going to select unit and connect it, and then it will show me the mesh for it. Now, next thing I want to do is I want to create what's called a set mesh slot material node. So I'm going to hit tab and type in set mesh slot material. All right, and this is where we're going to tell it to do some things. All right, number one, I always do a little housekeeping, and I always cross these up, so bear with me. I connect unit to unit and mesh to mesh. Now, my slot name, I name it the same thing as my unit. All right, so asphalt 01_NS. So I'm just going to type that in. Asphalt 01_NS. Hit OK. Now, under resource, that's the material I'm looking at. Now, I need to create a transparent material real quick. So I'm going to go here in my asset browser, and I will drop down to the SRP Webcast, hit the plus sign, and hit materials. All right, and I'm just going to search that, ASP. There's the material. That's the one that's not transparent, so I need to select it, right-click, and go to duplicate. All right, it creates a duplicate of that. I go right back to it and rename that particular material. So I'm going to backspace out the 1 and hit underscore and just say trans, and then I'll save. All right. Now once that's saved, I'm going to make sure I've got my transparent material highlighted, and in my property editor, all right, I'm going to change the parent resource here to a transparent resource. So I'm going to type in trans just to kind of weed this down, and I'll select standard transparent. It was set to standard before. It needs to be set to standard transparent. That gives me another option here. I can change my opacity. All right, so I'm going to change that to 0.3, and you can see that it does make it transparent. I hit save, and I'm good to go. All right, now I'm going to add that into my set mesh slot material slot for resource. I'm just going to type trans, and that'll narrow everything down, and I'll pick that transparent material. Notice it has underscore trans. All right, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, okay, and I will paste it, and there's only one thing I want to change, and that's the resource. So I need to change that back to the non-transparent material. I'm just going to type, well, shoot, I got happy with my fingers here. Let's do this. That's the slot name. Let's go back. All right, and you can see here is the original material, the _S. So I'll double click there, and I am good to go. Now, that's everything that we need in order to create the transparency. Now we just need to control it. We need to go ahead and hook unit to unit and mesh to mesh. And now I'm going to hit tab, and I'm going to type in keyboard button. All right, and we're just going to control this with a keyboard button right now because, again, we are running a little low on time. So when that keyboard button is pressed, I want it to make things transparent. So I attach it here, right? And the button name I'm going to use is just a T on my controller or on my keyboard. And then I'll copy this button down and say when it's released, I want it to show this mesh material. All right? Now I could go ahead and set up a Steam VR button for this, but for time's sake, I'm just going to show you the output. So if I go up and test my level, I'll be able to see here once it comes up. All right, I can see it. Now if I hit my T key, you can see that it makes my pavement transparent. So I would need to do that for my grass also, the same steps that I just went through, but it's really very easy after you've done it a couple times. It's the same setup, and you could copy and paste it and just change the appropriate information. All right, now I've got about 7 minutes here before I need to finish up, so I'm going to go ahead and jump back into 3ds Max, and let's animate a car real quick. All right, so I'm going to go here to my perspective view, and I'm going to spin this around to where I'm looking at it a little bit different, not on its top. All right, and I'll zoom in and bring it back to orthographic, and I want to look at the top. All right, so I want to put a car right here. All right, I want it to come in and park. So I'm going to create a spline. Now, you do need to be in an orthographic view, all right, wherever you're at, because if you're in a perspective view, it's not going to draw this in the right location. All right, it'll be skewed a little. So it's trying to auto save. So I'm going to go ahead and select that I want to create a line. All right, and you won't be able to see this, but you'll see it in a minute. I'm just going to pick here, 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 and I'm going to zoom in. I'll pick one more time, and then I'll park the car. Hit enter, then hit escape, and you can see an axis come up. I'll change back to my perspective view, and I can rotate this around, and I can see my line. Now, I just need to move that up. Now, the first thing people say is, well, you know, that's not in the right spot. Okay, it's not in the right spot horizontal, or it is horizontally. It's where I want that to go, but it's not vertically where it needs to go. Well, I'm going to use civil view to actually place the car. Okay, and when I do that, I'm going to tell it to stick to a surface. And of course, I didn't get it raised up enough. So let's just, I'll raise it up a little bit more so I can see it. All right, we'll go back to the top view, and I'm going to rotate it around. There we go. All right, so I'm going to stick a car to that right there. One thing I want to do before I do that, I want to select that again. It's still selected, so I'll just make sure it's selected. I'll pick it again. So I want to modify that particular line, all right, because I want it to have curves here. So I'm going to pick each vertex that I want there to be a filleted curve. All right, so I'm just going to pick each one of these. It's got something funky going on there, which is okay. And I'll leave that, and we'll just put the curve right here. All right, and I'll scroll down here, and I'll pick fillet. All right, I want to fillet that, and then I can just pick right here on my arrows and move up with my left click, and you can see it creates curves. All right, hit escape. And I am good to go. I'm ready to place a car. All right. I'll go ahead and hit File and Save. We are good to go. Now we're going to open up Civil View real quick. So I'm going to go to, come on, baby. It's taking a second. I'm going to go to Civil View and hit Start Civil View. Now you can check in Civil View in the options to automatically load it, but I just want to show that you can add that pretty quick. So I'm going to go to Civil View, and I'm going to select Object Placement Style Editor. I'll move this over. My parent shape, okay? My parent shape is going to be that spline I built. My parent surface is going to be my asphalt. I'm just going to pick on the asphalt, right? I'm going to give it an element of a car. We're going to use a Cadillac because I like Cadillacs. And I'll tell it I just want to do a single object. And I'm going to have it come in at about 40 miles an hour. That's how fast it's supposedly coming in. I'm going to hit apply. It's going to adjust my timeline. And then what I want to do is I want to drag that timeline around. You can see the car moving to the end, and you can see, I'm going to go ahead and close this, that it's overlapped, all right? That happens quite a bit. Very easy to change. All I have to do is go down here to my time configuration, and I can change that. I need to move it back before I can see. Right there is where the car is going to park. So it's 682, frame 682 is where it needs to stop. So I will change that to 682. Now this is just something for me to make sure that I'm doing things correctly. We could probably, whenever we bake this, we can change it. But right now, that's how I'm going to show you. I'm going to go back to a perspective view. One last thing we need to do before we push this out as an FBX file is we need to go here. Let me bring my car. There's my Cadillac. I need to select the body, hold my shift key, and select the wheels. Okay, I need to convert in the rendering pull down. I need to go to scene converter. These materials that, or the materials that make up the car in civil view are metal ray materials, and it's not going to work out well for us in 3ds Max Interactive. So I select metal ray, and I'm going to drop down and tell it to convert it to a standard material. I will hit apply only selected, hit apply, hit add rule, and I'll hit convert scene, and it's going to convert it. All right, once this is done, I'm going to export an FBX file. And I realize we're getting close on time here. Bear with me. All right, say no. I'm going to go to file and export selected. So this car is already selected. I'm going to go out here to my folder system. And I'll go to VR level 2. I'm going to create the car folder and get in that, and I'll call it CTS and hit save. And it exports that out. Now, one thing you need to be sure, bake animation is selected, resample all, and this is our timeline. Make sure that that matches what we have. Hit OK or what we need. If you get a bunch of errors, then you skip the last step. You did not convert the scene. We're going to go right back into Max Interactive. All right. I'm going to, I know we're getting close, but I'm almost finished. I'm going to go to content. I'm going to create a new directory, and I'm just going to call this car. All right. I'll get into that, and I will clear the current search. That way I can hit import. I'll import that car. All right. Just going to go back out to my folder. Go to car, select CTS, and hit open. Be sure that you select animation, and I always go ahead and tell it to create an animation folder. I'm going to hit import, and it's now in my scene. Now, I'm just going to drag that car into my scene. So I grab the unit for the CTS, and I'm going to drag it out and just drop it somewhere. Over here under transform in the property editor, it's not in the right spot. I'm just going to right-click on the arrows for X, Y, and Z, and the car is in the correct location. Now, one more thing we need to do before we create the controller for this is we need to get into our animation. And I'm going to select the animation itself. Notice the car is up in the air a little bit. I need to take out these animation compression check marks and hit save, and notice that car goes down. Now it'll travel on the surface that I told it to. All right, last thing, we're done. I'm going to create a level flow for that car. All right, so I'm going to go to level flow. Actually, I'm going to select the car as my unit. I'll right-click and I'll tell it I want to create a level unit for the CTS. All right, I'm going to hit tab and I'm going to type play animation clip, and it comes in. All right, and since I'm already here, I'm going to go ahead and type level loaded because it needs to have an event. All right, so when the level's loaded, it'll start this animation. So I'm going to tie unit to unit. All right, and I'm going to go here to my animation, and there's my animation for that unit. and then I'm going to tie out to play. Now let's test this. I'll hit test my level, and we should see the car come in loop. It's going to loop. All right, you see the car come in. Again, it won't come in that fast in the very beginning. I can hit T and notice that my pavement does go transparent. All right, so it'll come all the way around to the parking spot, and it's set to loop right now. We can take that function off, and it would actually park the car and not loop. But this will actually go into the parking stall and then start over again. And we change that right here in our play animation clip. We just tell it not, we just set that to false. All right, so that's the end. We got 3 minutes left here. Sorry guys, I went over 2 minutes. I know we needed 5 minutes at the end.
John, I'm going to change myself back to presenter, and I have a couple more slides I want to show, and then we'll get to questions right at the very end, okay?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. Bear with me just a second while I show my screen. So a couple more polls before we let you go and get to questions. First of all, would you like to access the data set from today's from John's webcast today? He's offering that up, and if you answer yes to the question, we'll grab your email off the poll download, and John will be in touch with you. So far 50% of you have voted, and I'll just give that a few more seconds for more of you to provide your responses. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close that down. And then finally, would you like someone from Autodesk to give you a call and talk about how to get this workflow going in your company?
One thing to add, Eric, this workflow I just showed you, it works for all projects. It's the same steps to bring your project that you have that you want to push into a VR.
This is actually a good opportunity, John, to address one of the questions we had is what's the demand for this and what's the ROI? So why should people care about doing this for their clients?
Well, number one, think about site visits, all right? How often is there multiple offices that need to be out on a site to meet for a meeting for, say, some kind of design review? You could create a VR and you could have 5 or 6 different offices participate in the VR experience and solve the problems right there and never have to travel to the site. Number two, it helps with safety, all right? I don't know how many projects you've had that have had safety issues. We can create this VR experience and people are not in harm's way. Roadway projects, site design projects, there's all kinds of safety problems that this solves. Also, you're able to check design as to what you actually have designed, and you can look at visual clashes. So if I had more than just that one piece of pipe, I could actually, well, I say one piece of pipe, one storm network, I could actually have all of my utilities in there, and I could visually see where they clash. And you could have, again, multiple people in multiple offices looking at the same thing and make those design decisions right there. And I could go into construction and what it really helps with there, but we're running out of time here, so.
All right, great. Thanks, John. I went ahead and closed down that poll. We want to let you guys know about a special offer we're offering right now, and you can learn more about this at the URL at the bottom, autodesk.com/campaigns/global-promotion. I'm having trouble talking today too. And John, of the products that you showed today, how many of them are in the AEC collection?
Every one of them. They're all in the AEC collection.
I thought so.
Yep.
I also want to remind everyone of the webcast that's coming up a week from today, 1 hour earlier than this time slot, about Plant 3D. And now I realize we're a little bit over, but a couple of questions that I thought for those folks that are still sticking around. One question was, if the model changes, what's it like to get the changes propagated back into the VR, John?
Well, if the model changes, we aggregated everything in InfraWorks, right? So we could actually just export out FBX-wise what we needed or what changed, and then import it into Max and push that into Max Interactive. Or you could bring in an FBX file into Max Interactive also. So you just bring in what needs to be updated.
Question that came up was regarding Revit Live, and I think I know the answer to this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the question came up was like, why not just bring this stuff into Revit Live or use Revit Live for this? And if I understand correctly, Revit goes into Revit Live, but the stuff, the model content that you were working with would not go into Revit Live. Is that accurate?
That's accurate, yes. Yeah, Revit Live has, I think it even has a default scene that it sets the buildings in. So you're not able to bring in your content or your site into Revit Live unless that's changed. But I'm 99.9% sure that's correct.
Another question that came up is, for someone who's new to 3ds Max, where can you start? And I think, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the response you're going to give is there's not really a whole lot of 3ds Max involved in this workflow. Like, you can have a very limited knowledge of it and still do this. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. All we use 3ds Max for is to bridge the gap, or it's a direct bridge into 3ds Max Interactive. So we, again, aggregated everything in InfraWorks, pushed those FBX files out, brought them into Max, and basically, we ran the Meshinator on it. That was one step. If that's all you wanted to do, then that's all you do in Max. The other, it just opens up a door for you to be able to do a lot of other things inside of Max. It's creative, meaning you can animate a car, you can animate people, you can do a lot inside of 3ds Max. But if, again, I made the statement, it kind of scares people when you say 3ds Max. What I showed today, you could have zero knowledge, and you could watch this video and you could duplicate everything I did. I promise, because there's not that many steps inside of Max, and that hopefully was by design by the workflow that I showed you.
Yep, and if you have the collection, there's no extra investment either because you've already got 3ds Max. So
that's exactly right.
I know another question that came up was, the question was, how much time did it take to build this model? And my response, I actually responded in the questions panel, is the idea is you would take the design that you already created for your client, whether you did it in Civil 3D or InfraWorks or both. It's something you would already have, and then this workflow is to take that and turn it into a VR experience. So there's really no extra work other than what you just showed to take something you would have created anyway for your client and turn it into a VR. Would you say that's pretty accurate?
That's exactly accurate. And if they wanted to know how long it takes to go from complete scratch, from Civil 3D back to the shared reference point data set, where I had no InfraWorks model built, it took me about 45 minutes to build that model in InfraWorks, okay, from the information I had in Civil 3D. So I brought that in, I linked the Revit model in, and I was done. So I was at that point ready to go into Max and Max Interactive at the time if we'd have had this workflow in March of last year. Mm-hmm. So it really doesn't take that much time to bring information into InfraWorks, and again, that's why I use it for the aggregator of data, because once everything's in there, you just saw it. It's pushed directly into Max, so on and so forth. So it doesn't take long at all.
Now, John, we had the poll question about providing the data set. Is there a document in that data set that kind of has a step-by-step for folks to follow?
There absolutely is. And if can I show my screen again?
Sure.
Do we have time?
Sure.
All right. I'm going to make myself presenter. All right. This is the document. It is step-by-step on how to bring everything in, how to make the parking and pavement, or the parking and grass transparent, and how to add vehicles. And I also included the steps to create the Steam VR buttons. All right, you not only get that, but in the data set there is a set of videos with no sound that shows you all of these steps. So literally you can go through and you can step through each individual step of this creation that I just showed today. And there's also this InfraWorks Utilities plugin, I've also got a video in there on how to actually install that into Max Interactive. And that's in this document also. Hopefully that helps everyone.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a huge help. All right, well, we're a few minutes over time, so I think I'm going to wrap this up now. I want to thank everyone for giving us some time out of their day. Hope you found the presentation useful. I want to thank John for giving a great presentation, Dave Tyner and Dave Lawrence for answering a large number of questions in the background. And thanks for giving us some time out of your busy days, Dave and Dave. And we hope to see you again on a future webcast. Please check back with us on what we've got going on. And have a great week. See ya.
Thanks, everyone.